My name is Sue, and actually I've been a dietitian for 48 years in July, and cancer nutrition has been my professional passion since 1986. I did 38 years in the NHS, and when I decided that full-time working was too much for me, I have been working in private healthcare most of the time since. So I currently work at the Rutherford Cancer Centre in South Wales. But for a year, I was covering also the Thames Valley Cancer Centre. And I don't know if you know it, but they actually do an innovative cancer treatment called proton beam therapy. And if anybody wants any particular questions about that, I'm happy to answer that. Just to add to what Jackie's saying, once you've seen the presentation, we don't always absorb what we listen to, but I'm happy to share the presentation. Jackie can share it, and if you have any particular questions arising from that, I'll give you a window of opportunity until a week tomorrow to just email me any questions. I've given Jackie permission to give you my work email. So lovely. Well, thank you for asking me to speak. Today we're going to be talking about these topics. Now there are two ways of looking at diets, non-conventional diets. You've got the alternative therapies and you've got the complementary therapies. And the alternative therapies are ones where somebody will follow a dietary regimen and refuse cancer treatment. Whereas a complementary diet would be that a person with cancer will continue their conventional treatment, but will try and change what they're eating according to stuff that they've read. Now, alternative diets are not good. We know that at the moment, with current evidence, we've got the best chance of curing or treating cancer with the current modalities that we have across the world, but particularly in the UK. So we have chemotherapy, immunotherapy, we have surgery, we have radiotherapy, and we have proton beam. The concerns that I've always had, and I dealt with a young lad last year, age 29, who had been diagnosed with a brain tumour 2.5 years previously, and had gone on a keto diet and had refused all medical care. And he came to us last year for salvage radiotherapy because his tumour was now not curable. And he had spent 2.5 years following keto, which I will explain in a minute. So as a registered dietitian, I'm registered with the Healthcare Professions Council. And if I were to advise any dietary intervention to which little evidence had been found, I could be struck off. It's as simple as that. So I think part of the strength of being a dietitian is I am aware of the evidence that's around. Now, we're going to be talking about social media and influence a little bit later on, but anybody in this chat today could decide a cure for cancer and could publish it on the internet. And that there's no control over that at all. And as your people who I am assuming have had cancer at some point, we're very, very susceptible to treatments and cures. And I have had many, many, many robust arguments over the years over people who are not registered dietitians, who have suddenly come up with a cure for cancer. And one example I'll give you, in my local area, there was a therapist who told one of my patients to eat a pound of seeded green grapes every day, and it would cure their cancer. There's no evidence for that. This was back in the 80s. There's never been any evidence for that. So part of my job is to dispel the myths. But I have had patients, especially this young lad last year, and another lady actually also with a brain tumour, who wanted to follow keto. Now, I can't recommend keto or any of those other regimes that I'm showing you, but if somebody is absolutely determined to follow it, then I will do my best to support them while keeping myself and them safe. So we'll talk first of all then about keto. Now, the alternative diets, I'll just tell you what they are that we know of at the moment. There's the Gershon therapy, which started off in Tijuana in New Mexico, and that actually is still outlawed in the United States. And you go down there and you go on basically a protein-free coffee enemas. You have high fiber. These are people who are really desperately poorly, who have problems with their appetite. And when you leave the cancer centre in Tijuana, you're deemed as cured. And there have been cases of people, unfortunately, not surviving the diet. Okay. The other one that we think of would be macrobiotic diet. And then you have the complementary diets, which actually most of these that I'm going to be talking about today can be, but shouldn't be, incorporated into a conventional treatment. And I've got a patient very recently whose family had got him to follow keto, dairy-free, alkaline, low sugar. That's impossible. And all this man wanted was a bowl of sugar puffs. So what did Sue the dietitian say? You have a bowl of sugar puffs. Okay, so we'll talk very briefly about these ones that are most common as complementary. So the ketogenic diets. Now I'm going to be talking about myths and facts here. Okay, so the myth around keto diet is that it decreases tumor size and spread. And the way that this has been developed is because a ketogenic diet has been proven to be successful in controlling epilepsy in children. And there is currently a UK-wide research study going on looking at the use of keto in the control of brain tumors, but there is no conclusive evidence yet because the study is ongoing. Okay, so there is no, at the moment, no fact or no evidence at all that following a keto diet will alter the progression of a brain tumor particularly. And there are some people who are quite interested in using it in breast cancer as well. And there are studies going on in America, but not here yet. So the fact of this diet is that a keto diet is very, very, very low in carbohydrate. Now, a normal UK diet for an adult would give you around about 200, 220 grams of carbohydrate a day. That is how important carbohydrate is in our diets. In keto, in order to go into ketosis, which means fat burning, the ladies and gentlemen will follow a diet with less than 50 grams of carbohydrate in it. So you're already seeing that this diet is extremely unbalanced in the point of view of the fiber that it's providing, the vitamins and minerals that are found in starchy carbohydrates. It's a very high fat intake. And these two patients that I dealt with last year, they were taking glasses of oil, drinking glasses of oil in order to get their fat intake up. Okay, so the diet, this is one of the most unbalanced or imbalanced regimes that you could follow when you're going through cancer treatment. Now, as I say, I'm assuming that all of you have had treatment at some point. We know that one of the most common side effects, I call them nutrition impact symptoms, going through any treatment for cancer, is actually loss of appetite. So if you've got loss of appetite and you're expected to take high fat, 100 mils drinking of MCT oil every day, it is almost impossible. And I'll get to another slide later on, which shows you actually the psychological harm that these diets can do. So what happens if a lady or gentleman follows a keto diet? You will lose weight, absolutely guaranteed. But not only will you lose weight, you'll also lose skeletal muscle mass, which are your muscles on your arms and your legs, the ones that keep you in good, able to physically function, to do your activities of daily living, to go and do things that you enjoy doing as well. And loss of physical function occurs in a lot of patients when they're going through treatment anyway, and the keto diet actually compounds that. Then we've got the other side effects with the keto diet is chronic constipation or diarrhea, and quite noticeable enormous fatigue. Now, for those of you who may have had chemotherapy, those are three of the main symptoms you get with chemo, isn't it? So you're following a keto, you've got your chemo side effects, and then you've got your keto side effects on the top. Adherence is very, very low. And they are using keto diets for the control of obesity in the UK. But the National Obesity Forum actually says nobody should follow a keto diet for longer than 12 weeks. And my little lad last year, 2.5 years on a keto diet. So as you can tell, I don't necessarily support this one at all. Then we've got dairy-free. And the myth with the dairy-free is that the hormones which are used in the production of milk, sorry, my mind's gone. The hormones used in the production of milk will prevent or increase the hormone-related tumours. And this is particularly, I'm sure if any ladies there who've had treatment for breast cancer, this is one of the main things that comes up. Dairy causes cancer. It doesn't. There is no link whatsoever that milk increases cancer risk. In fact, dairy may actually exert a protective effect against breast cancer because the calcium in it, the vitamin D and other nutrients found in milk products. Okay. Then we look at soya, and the myth around soya is that isoflavones, which are found in soya, have a chemical structure similar to estrogen. Estrogen can stimulate cancer, therefore isoflavones can also stimulate cancer. There's no evidence at all between the link between isoflavones and cancer. And actually, soya is a very, very good source of non-animal protein and fiber. And if you look at the World Cancer Research Fund, the recommendations for a healthy diet is that we try and reduce our animal protein and have 1 or 2 days animal protein-free meals during our week. And actually the use of soya is a very, very good substitute for animal products. Then we've got sugar, and I get this all the time, is that sugar feeds cancer. If you look at cell physiology, everything that we eat is converted into a mono carbohydrate called glucose. And in your cells, the things that give you energy are these little things called mitochondria. And the mitochondria require glucose for energy. So all cells require glucose, whether it's a cancer cell or whether it's a non-cancer cell. And there is clear evidence that a slow-growing, badly nourished cancer tumour is actually less responsive to the cancer treatments than a healthy, well-fed cancer cell. And that's put in very simplistic terms, and I do apologise for that. But cutting out sugar doesn't restrict glucose to cancer cells. That's it in a nutshell. And there are sugars, and this is what the influence and the social media don't demarcate, is that sugars are found, sugars, and sugars I mean glucose, sucrose, fructose, lactose. These are found in all our healthy foods. Lactose is found in milk, got fructose found in fruit, and these are important to us. And those sugars, because they're surrounded by fibre and other products, so for example, you've got sugar in milk, or you've got a bit of fat in milk, so the absorption of those sugars is lower than just taking a teaspoon of sugar. And these starchy carbs, fruit and veg, are clearly linked to a lower risk of cancer. So cutting out all these sugars actually is not doing your body any good. And just another thing to say with all these diets, if you get diagnosed early enough with cancer, the outlook is really very good these days. Most people who come for treatment will go for cure. Those who can't be cured will be given treatments that control your illness so you can live well. And the number of people that are being cured is going up all the time. So we need to eat well for the rest of our lives. So we need to eat a good, balanced diet. Now, on the other hand, you've got what we as dietitians would call free sugar. So this is sugar, usually in the form of sucrose or glucose, fructose, which is added to products. And these are usually added to things like biscuits, cakes, sweets, chocolates, things like that. There is nothing wrong in eating those, but it's the proportion and the quantity that we eat. There is the Eat Well guide, which you can download online. Just do Eat Well guide. And if you're a vegetarian, there's a vegetarian Eat Well guide. And if you follow, if you're Asian, there's an Asian Eat Well guide. If you download that, that will show you in a very, very nice form. It's a plate model. It will show you exactly the proportions of foods that we should be eating every day for health. And right at the bottom, on the left-hand corner, is sugary and fatty foods. Eat in moderation. Okay? So too much sugar can be unhealthy, and that not for cancer, but for causing things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. And the current recommendation is that with these free sugars, we should try and limit that to about 6 teaspoons a day. Just to put that into context, a 2-finger Kit Kat contains 10 grams of sugar, so that's 2 teaspoons. So you can incorporate sweets and chocolates into your diet, but in proportion. Okay, so then we come to the alkaline diet. Now, the alkaline diet, this is a very, very difficult one, really, because the myth around it is that an acidic environment promotes ill health, and alkaline promotes good health. So food can affect the pH in the body, and our blood is naturally alkaline. So pH level of 7.4, if it's below 7, it's tending toward acidic, and if it's above 7 or 7.4, it's alkaline. And so the myth is that you can eat certain foods to change the pH of your body. It's an absolute nonsense, I'm afraid. You cannot. Blood pH is regulated by the kidneys and the lungs. We cannot affect the blood pH with anything that we eat. And excess acid is excreted in the urine. So we can't alter it by diet, and it is a draconian regime, let me absolutely assure you. What you can do, you can change the pH of your urine, so the acidity or alkalinity of your urine, but that is just showing that the kidneys are doing their job. Now, there are certain illnesses where the pH of your body will change, but these are serious illnesses that, for example, the one that I tend to use is this diabetic condition called ketoacidosis. If you get diabetic ketoacidosis, you are seriously critically ill. And so just to prove that actually, please, if you don't listen to anything else, pay no attention to this myth. And there was a case in America a few years ago of she was a young officer from Sandhurst, and she had quite a rare cancer, and she went to America to a therapist who put her on an alkaline diet, and I'm very, very sad to say that she actually died, and the therapist is now serving a very long prison sentence because it was actually manslaughter. Okay, I'm not trying to depress you, I'm just giving you the facts, you know. Then we've got fasting. Now, I call it a myth, but it is a sort of, it isn't as much of a myth as the other ones. But if you look at fasting, the idea or the notion around fasting is that fasting can improve the effect of chemo and its symptoms. And there's a great caveat to this, in that short-term fasting may increase the effectiveness of chemo, but this has only been shown in animal experiments. It has not been shown in the human model. And the side effects of fasting, short-term fasting, and fasting means that you're spending a certain part of your day without food or nourishment. And I don't know if you've heard of Michael Mosley. I'm sure you have. I hope you haven't. But he does 6 hours eating and 18 hours fasting. And the idea behind that is actually it stimulates your cells. Your cells going, oh my gosh, we're in starvation. Let's become, let's get cracking. But the side effects, and for you, who any of you have had chemo, the side effects will be compounded. You've got headache, nausea, weakness, weight loss, and actually feeling hungry. But from there are studies going on, perhaps short-term fasting, perhaps while you're having your chemo or on the weeks that you have your chemo, might, and I'm really pleased to write this down, might be a benefit, but studies are ongoing. Okay. Then finally we get to vitamins and minerals, and the notion around here is that high doses of vitamins and minerals can increase the effects of treatment and reduce recurrence. They can alleviate side effects and they can boost the immune system. No. In fact, when somebody comes to me for chemotherapy or radiotherapy of whatever kind, we always say, please do not take please don't take additional vitamins and minerals when you're going through the treatment, because the antioxidant vitamins, the ACE, actually protect the cell, which is why we're advised to take them. So it protects the cell against free radical damage, but it also protects the cancer cell. So taking vitamin and mineral supplements during any type of treatment will actually potentially reduce a beneficial outcome. Okay, so the only vitamin supplement that I recommend when somebody's going through the treatment, and it is age related. So if somebody's over the age of 65, the current recommendation is to take 10 micrograms of vitamin D a day throughout the year, because we're in the Northern Hemisphere and we don't get enough sunshine. And if you're under 65, the recommendation is to take the 10 micrograms a day between October and April. So start taking it when the clocks go back and stop taking it when the clocks go forward. So next slide. Hello, there we are. Oh, go ahead. So how do alternative diets harm patients? And there's a very good, he's a psychiatrist actually, his name is Stephen Barrett, and he actually runs Quack Watch. And if you ever want to have an afternoon of or 10 minutes of looking at the spurious claims, particularly in America, log on to Quack Watch, because Stephen Barrett's been doing this since the 1980s. And he actually is quoted as saying, what's the difference between a highwayman and a quack? So a highwayman demands your money all your life, and a quack demands your money and your life. The downside, how do they harm you? Economic harm. These diets are extremely expensive. A lot of them you have to go to a centre, and this young lad that I had last year was paying a nutritionist in America over $200 a week to have remote advice. That's about £180, £190 a week. Plus he had to buy the MCT oil, plus he had to buy lots of protein. It was a costly business for him. So a patient will be hurting their pockets. And that is for all these diets, whether it's vitamins and minerals, they're not cheap to buy. It also causes physical harm, and just a few of them. Malnutrition is the main one. Toxicity, because some of these things can actually hurt the body. It can impact upon treatment. So if you have the side effects like your nausea, your vomiting, your weakness, your fatigue, you might require a break in your treatment schedule due to their side effects. And then that actually affects your outcome at the end. And then it does psychological harm. And I have seen this many times over the years, since the 80s, in that a lady or a gentleman will find a particular regime that they start to follow, but most of them are absolutely impossible to maintain for any length of time. They're impossible to maintain if you're well. If you're unwell, it just doesn't work. And what happens is that they will be left with dreadful feelings of guilt. I can't even do this for myself. And what I spend, some of my time doing, eat as well as you can. You take control. If you want a bowl of sugar puffs, have a bowl of sugar puffs. Okay. So next slide. So who follows these diets? And this is a very interesting study done, I think it was 2017, by Garland et al. And it's not a huge study. It was done in the USA, and it was only 316 people, but they came out with significant demographic factors. So Mostly, the majority of these people were below 65. Most of them were female. They were in the higher income bracket. They were well educated, and that is up to degree level and beyond, and most likely diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, the thing with breast cancer is that it is one of the most common cancers. So hence, it's not surprising that most of the people who they surveyed would have had this diagnosis. And there's no correlation with cancer stage. So you can have people who will have their diagnosis and then think, right, I need to follow this. Or you can have people who are given perhaps not so good news towards the end of their trajectory, towards the end of their life, and they'll do anything to hand. That's why they need people like dietitians to say, actually, I can look after you, but I can look after you well. So I found that reference there. I found that quite interesting. So why do they follow them? So symptom control is one of the main things. Hopes of a cure. And again, unfortunately, most of them are giving spurious claims of cure. The ladies and gentlemen are hoping to reduce the risk of recurrence. Well, the best way to use diet to reduce recurrence is to follow a well-balanced diet. But this is what I found over the years, that the people who go online are people who haven't actually had the right advice from their health provider. And I know I'm talking about dietitians because I'm one, but there are very few dietitians working in cancer care. And in fact, when I went to work at my local cancer centre in the 90s, I was the only dietitian in any cancer centre in Wales. Much better now, but I think that's it. They're not getting the advice that they need. And I'll just check that a minute. Right, go back. So, hang on 2 seconds. So there was another study, and this was done in 2018, and it was in Korea, but they looked at quite a large number. There was 896 lymphoma patients, and they looked at where do you get your information from? So they found out that they accessed this nutrition information from a variety of sources. So they've got social media, Twitter, Instagram, and the newspapers. You've got influencers, you've got Dr. Google. Now, the problem with the internet is it's not controlled. So as I say, anybody could write on there about, I've got this wonderful cure for cancer, and nobody would take it down. The other one that I found over the years is that other patients will give advice on, well, I did this, and I was fine. In fact, we had a patient recently who said that his auntie had been cured of her cancer by using CBD oil, which there is no evidence at the moment. I'm sure there will be in the future, but at the moment there isn't. And with patients giving each other advice, what works for one patient might not necessarily work for another one. And there are other things to consider. So first of all, drug interactions. Now, the one particular thing that I have always said over the years is that if you're on chemotherapy, there are certain things that you shouldn't eat because it will interact and reduce the effects of the chemo. And people are always surprised to know that the two things you should avoid are grapefruit and pomegranates. Now, pomegranate's probably a bit of a niche fruit, but it just shows you that just because it's a fruit or a veg, it doesn't mean to say that it can be eaten, willy-nilly. So what I would suggest with anybody who's having any sort of treatment, any sort of drug treatment, read the insert, because the insert will tell you quite clearly whether you should or shouldn't be taking them. Other things to consider is what about nutritional deficiencies, which is what I said earlier on. If you're taking a diet that's very low in carbohydrate, you're taking a diet that's very low in fiber, very low in calcium, very low in other particularly the B vitamins. And we need when we're going through treatment, we need a balanced diet more than ever before, because we're eating well to get the best from the treatment, and we're eating well for the rest of our lives. So then also one of the major things that I come across is that there will be weight loss. Now, when somebody's going through a cancer treatment, if they lose weight, they don't just lose body fat, they lose muscle mass. And muscle mass is really, really important to keep you functioning physically. And it's simple things like the activities of daily living, getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, combing your hair, eating your dinner, these sorts of things that if you lose your muscle mass, they are very difficult to continue doing. And when people are going through treatment, life is not normal for them, is it? Whereas if they can stay well nourished, they can cope with the treatment and they can cope with living their lives as well. Okay. So this is another thing to say. If anybody is interested, or if you find a cure or something online, ask these questions. What is the source? Where's this information coming from? And good sources will be medical journals which publish research, registered cancer charities like Cancer Research UK, and health professionals. And that is probably the only areas where you can be pretty sure that you're getting good evidence. Look at what is the evidence for the diet based upon. They've got to be the biggest population possible, because you can read about, oh, 6 people did this and they were cured, but it needs to be significant high numbers of people to go, actually, the potential is that this dietary intervention is effective in treating cancer. And another little word to remember, so intervention studies on people with cancer are a good basis for you to find out whether that diet is effective or not. And is the diet being sold? So be extremely careful if the regime that you're thinking of following is going to cost you money, because 9 times out of 10 that will mean that they're doing it for profit and not science. And this happens a lot. How restrictive is the diet? And I know I've talked about this before, but eating only a few foods will result in dietary imbalance and malnutrition. And that's a very good little thing. But don't let desperation lead you to try things just because someone advises you to do so. Seek the advice of a dietitian. My British Dietetic Association have an oncology specialist group, so oncology means cancer. So there's a specialist group of dietitians. You can actually get through to the BDA and you can ask questions of the oncology group, and they will do their best to answer any of your questions at all. Oh, hang on. So I'm not going to go much further than that, just to say that if you open this link, it will actually show you the current information from the British Dietetic Association on cancer diets. And just to say, thank you very much and good luck, because there's a jungle of information out there. And I hope that I've given you a little bit of some tools for you to be more selective and more objective about looking at them. Thank you.